Welcome to Pathways Through the Prairie, the North Dakota State Library podcast, where we interview North Dakota librarians and staff, state government leaders and employees, and interesting North Dakotans. I am State Librarian Mary Soucie, and I am the podcast host. And today I am talking with Bev Vilhauer, the Wishek Public School and Public Library Director. And Bev has been with the library since July of 2023. So thank you for joining me today, Bev.
You're welcome.
Bev, the State Library's vision is providing pathways to knowledge and opportunities. What was your pathway into libraries?
It's kind of a funny story because I worked at the city library when it was located downtown in 1972. And so I was probably 13 or 14 years old. I helped the librarian at that time onboard books, and then I did story hour on Saturday afternoons, and kind of covered library hours back then. And then I found a more steady job and went into the healthcare industry. And eventually I got married, raised my children, went to college. And then the last 8 or 9 years of my career were spent here in our local hospital as the CEO of the hospital. So I had been the finance director and the CFO and worked 8 years at Linton, came back here as the CEO, and then I retired. And then I came back to the library.
Wow. So from CEO of a hospital to library director of a small rural public library and a part-time school librarian.
Right.
So, very different jobs then.
Very much so, but dealing with the public, I think I think in all of my years of employment, it is the people, and whether it's staff, whether it's patients, whether it is, and then it is customer service. I think a lot of in the healthcare industry, a lot of your scores are based on how you do financially, but how happy the people are with your service that you're providing. So it's a service area, kind of the same as the library. So
sure.
Love it when, love to visit with people, love to brag about what we're doing here. And we've done a lot in the 2 short years that I've been here. So
what are some of the things that you've done while you've been there? You've made some changes.
Yeah. So when I came on board, the city, like I said, I work part-time for the city as the librarian. And then a year and a half ago, the librarian here in the school took ill and couldn't continue her employment here. And so I said, well, if you need someone for the library, I'm available. I had retired, and they did. And so here I am. And one of the things the board had done was they did a survey from the community. What are you seeing, and what would you like to see? And so as a result of that survey, one of them wanted kind of the hours changed. So we did that. On a Wednesday, we used to be open from 7 until 9. And the suggestion was to open at 5 until 7 so that people getting off of work, could stop at the library and that type of thing. So those hours changed. Probably the biggest thing was that prior to our renovation here, you had to come through the school and walk through the school to get to the library. And one of the suggestions was to put a door directly into the library from outside. And so that goal has been achieved this year.
Fantastic.
I wrote for the transitions in community libraries or whatever, and transforming libraries. And then I was very surprised when I got awarded, $10,000 to put a door directly into the library. When you live in a rural community, those things don't happen overnight. I had a contractor come in and look at, what we wanted to do. And he's like, I don't do brick, Bev, I'm a wood kind of guy. So we found somebody who could cut the brick out of Bismarck, but he couldn't do it right away. And so we were at everybody's mercy to, wait.
Mm-hmm.
And so it took until July of this year, they finally cut the opening into that. And then, of course, as impatient as I am, I learned that, when you cut into the brick and lay new mortar or whatever, it has to cure. So, of course, it was another 2 until the door people came. And so I had a big panel of wood in the side of the school here. But luckily, I didn't get any mice in or whatever would creep through those areas. Then they were able to put the door in. And then, of course, you had to put a sidewalk into the door. And so that's all done now. But prior to that, we had, like I said earlier, we removed shelving and weeded out a lot of books. And then we had a local gal come in and paint the murals on the wall. Painted, the wall behind me is a sage green that all used to be white, and kind of redid a kid-friendly space in here. So when the kiddos come in for the school during the week, they have little chairs and tables, and we read stories and I think they're all excited about, coming to the library and reading and taking a book home and, seeing what is new in the library.
Mm-hmm. So how do you think your past experience in healthcare and as an administrator of a hospital helped you prepare for your retirement job of being a librarian?
I think it is getting to know the different people. I mean, I think you have different age groups that you cater to. In the hospital setting, my office is along the doorway. So if I heard people struggling to get inside, it was like getting up and helping them, or getting them wheelchairs, or getting them where they needed to be, or directing them and making it easier to gain access to the facility. And so I feel like that's what we've done with the library, was we've made it easier to gain access, whether it's for children, elderly population. I had a patron come in the other day and said, I absolutely love this door. She said, I did not like having to find my way through the school. And so those things warm my heart. So it is the gratitude of, once you help someone or help find what they're looking for, that's my reward there. It's and I think through COVID, when we've lived through COVID, I think there's a section of the student body that didn't know how to act in a library, and didn't, they just were not exposed to that. So I think that's helpful. I think especially, I think this year, I think our school has dialed back the online, not so much. They're bringing back books and reading out of a book and learning out of a book. And that's been beneficial. I mean, those kids are excited to come into the library and take home a book. And then it's kind of interesting because for the smaller group, when they come in here, I read them a book. And by the time we're done, somebody's always got their hand up and, can I take that book home? And introducing them to Marley the dog and the things that, this dog creates. And so it's kind of interesting. They sit, they listen, they're attentive, and they want to take home what they've just read. They want to do that. And then the other thing that I do is, yesterday was National Kindness Day, and the day before was National Pizza Day. So for the little ones who aren't avid readers, I will print out a coloring page and we'll read a book about kindness, and then we'll color a page about kindness. So it's just to reinforce what we're learning today, or what day are we celebrating today. Columbus Day, it was, a book about Christopher Columbus. And Veterans Day on Tuesday, we read a book about, Veterans Day and why we honor them. So for me, it's not just helping them pick up books. It is giving them some, kind of concrete on what's going on in the world, and, and then having fun with it.
Mm-hmm. So we do have, I think, here in North Dakota, we have some combined libraries like yours where it's the public and the school library together, which provides some unique opportunities. It also can provide some challenges. So what do you see as some of the unique opportunities, having the combined library?
I think the biggest thing, the first year that we had, take your kid to the library. And I had kids bringing their parents more so than, bringing their kids. But I had kids bringing their parents and some kids bringing their grandparents. And so it was playing games and, those types of things, getting out puzzles and playing puzzles. So I think that it's like you're never too old to stop reading, or you're never too young to learn, and then you're never too old to stop reading. And so I think it is that bringing the old and the young in here together and creating an atmosphere that, oh, I've read this book, when I went to school,
Sure.
And they're just some of those Dick and Jane books and that type of thing. So it's been a good, a very rewarding, I think, in that aspect.
Gosh, I haven't seen a Dick and Jane book in a very long time. And for our listeners who might not know what a Dick and Jane book is, that's how a whole generation of people learned to read. See Dick run, and then Dick, stick figure Dick would run, and then you see Jane run after Dick, and then and see Spot the dog. Yep. So, oh, that's fun. Bev, you've worked with the public for a long time through your health care career and now through your library career. And what is it about serving the public that fulfills you, that speaks to your heart?
I think it is when I find what they're looking for. I had last year in March or April. And of course, one of my biggest accomplishments was that we have the local newspaper, so the Wishek Star. And when I came on board, we had the Wishek Star from 1916 until 1942. And then we didn't have any more Wishek Stars until 1989, until recently. So we were missing like 46 years of our local newspaper. So we always had a bound copy. So I started looking to see where I could find a copy. And then Tony Bender, who was the last editor of the Wishek Star, passed away. And I reached out to his family and said, if you have any Wishek Star bound copies, we would love to acquire them because we're missing. And lo and behold, about probably a month ago, got a hold of the gentleman who took over the Wishek Star, and he said, we'll be happy to give you those Wishek Stars. And so it is back in our library. We have the whole set again. And last spring, I had a gentleman come looking for an article from 1935, and he was from Grand Forks, North Dakota. And he was looking for an article on past family members. And I didn't know it because I didn't page through, but back in 1935, they didn't just have the paper. They had copies of letters from people from Russia who, a lot of our ancestry came from Russia. And there were a lot of ancestors that wrote letters over here asking for help. And all of these letters were written in German. And all of these letters were printed in the newspaper. Like they were part of that daily paper. So part of the paper was in English, and then all of these letters were printed in German language. And Ron Vossler, he's a historian, and he spoke with both languages. He came back and he translated those letters into English. And then he did donate a book that he donated to the library. And so this gentleman was coming back and looking for information on his family. He found it. He was here for 3 hours and said once it was written, he would share with me what his findings were. So that is, those are the things that bring
Mhm.
me satisfaction. I had, not just last year, but the year before, a couple was looking for family history on graduation day. And usually on graduation day, it's on a Sunday, so we're really not open. But I put them in a little room in the middle here, found information that they were looking for. And by the time graduation was over with, and I came back to check on them, they had written me a wonderful thank you letter that they had found what they were looking for. And so I think part of it is that piece of information that we hold on to about the history of our community or about our heritage that I didn't know existed until I started working here.
That's really cool. One of the libraries that I worked at had this amazing obituary file that the library had been keeping for decades and decades on, just on index cards. And we would get requests from people all the time. And so we'd pull out the microfilm, and I loved reading those old newspapers from the early 1900s. It would be like, Mrs. Darren Sousie's sister visited her and they went to dinner at the Willington house and then they went to the supermarket. Like, just all this fabric of the life that we're not privy to today, because that's not what our newspapers focus on, that we've
Right.
lost some connection that we used to have back then.
Yep, that local news type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So I think
What?
those are the things that I've been, most gratifying is that when I can help people find what they're looking for, it's, for me, that's my reward at the end of the day.
I think you just answered my question. I was going to say, what's been the most rewarding thing about working at your library? Where are some areas of growth that you're hoping for in your library, or some opportunities?
I think, and we're working on that. I mean, we've had retired teachers that have made substantial financial contributions to the library. So a perfect example of that is Mr. Delmer Zimmerman was the superintendent here for, I want to say, over 30 years. And when I started here, he gave us like a $500 donation, for books. And so I took that $500 and we ordered books. And then within the book, I put a label in there donated by the Zimmerman family. And, and then I called his daughter, and she lives in Colorado, wondering if they were going to be here, because when I did the presentation or just kind of give him kudos for his donation, if the family could be here, I wanted them to be part of it. Well, they couldn't be, and he ended up in the assisted living, and it wasn't conducive for him to come over here. So our current elementary principal and I took the books to him, and we laid them out on his kitchen table, and we had somebody come in and take a photo, and just to thank him for his many years of service to the school, but for the donation, and that to show him we did in fact purchase, books, and these are the books, and the labels were in there. And he wanted a picture, and he needed me to send it to his daughter, and he was so appreciative. And he said, I've given money before, but nobody has ever recognized. And I said, well, that was, BB, that was before Bev.
I love it, BB, before Bev.
Yeah. And so he was just so appreciative, his family. And so I think it is getting the word out. And then our retired high school principal retired. Him and his wife both worked here, and he is downscaling. So he gave us he's a historian on Teddy Roosevelt. So he provided us with a whole shelf, or a whole bookshelf full of Teddy Roosevelt books and memorabilia and teddy bears. And so I did clear out, a space here in the library, a little corner. And then I had him and his wife come in, and we took pictures and put that on social media.
Wow, that's really nice. And with the presidential library opening next year, I bet your community is going to be really interested to have those, those materials. Bev, Wishek's small. How big is Wishek?
We're about somewhere between 800 and 900 people, so about 850 people.
So what do you think people would be surprised to learn about your library and this community of, just under 1,000 people?
Well, I don't know what they would, I think some people aren't aware of the library, for
Okay.
starters. I think we had to get that out there. And I think right now we put like a LED sign out there that tells you what the library hours are. So I think it's just kind of reawakening them that we do have a library. I think the fact that social media makes it easier to probably get more
Sure.
of the word out. And so I think everybody is, and then last year, the kids would come in and want to donate books to the library. Like they would earn points to get books and they would come in here. And so then I would snap a picture of them and, thanking them for the books in the library. The other thing that we've done in the more so this year than last year is the summer reading program. And so I think the first year I had like 10 or 11 kids participate. And then this year there were about 15 kids participating. So we did painting, we did Legos. I have little Legos all put together out here, and just did some of those STEM programs. So I think that there's more of an awareness. There's more family bringing their kids into the library to see what's new. And so yeah, it is letting people know primarily through social media and eventually through the newspaper what we're doing here and what the kids are enjoying here and that they love to come here and be read to. And I don't know that was always happening throughout the years. Is that I know at one point in time they had the English teacher doing library time, but I think a lot of her focus was, on her English class and correcting papers and that type of thing. So.
Sure. And how wonderful that your small community still has a community newspaper. That's awesome.
Yeah. And we're fortunate that the gentleman that bought it actually graduated from Wishek High School. So he has a job in Fargo, but he also felt like a calling that he wanted to come back here and help. And so that's been, and I think I've heard that he's very grateful because a lot of the local people are, putting things in the newspaper and getting things printed and doing articles and letting him know what's going on in town. We recently celebrated our 100th sauerkraut day. And then he had a gentleman come down from Fargo News and they did a whole thing on that. And the gentleman heard about our newspaper. So he came in and I was showing them the newspapers, how they were in German and in English. And they were very interested. And the gal that was with said, I could spend more time here. She said, this is really cool. And, those are just some of the things that we have here at the library. If you're looking for it, we have it.
Right. Yeah. That is awesome. Such a great service that you're providing to your community and so vital. So Bev, I always like to conclude the podcast with asking a question. Libraries do a lot of things now. We do programs in literacy and we check out STEM kits and all kinds of things. But we still are about books at the end of the day. So what is a book that you've enjoyed that you love to share with people?
Okay, and I just read it recently, but in what you don't know about me is that I am a descendant of Lawrence Welk.
Okay.
And so my maiden name was Welk, and so he would have been my dad's second cousin. So I guess that makes him my third cousin. Anyway, he's written books, and I have really gravitated towards learning how he came from this North Dakota boy who and so his books are very interesting. perhaps, one of the books that was written by his, I guess she was probably his, public relations person.
Mm.
And one of the things that was so profound for me is that when he lived in Escondido and had, he had made it and he was very successful there. And they asked him how far away his home was from Escondido. And he said, it is a rosary away. So his faith was so profound to him that that's how he spent his time community, is that he would pray the rosary. And so it
Wow.
was kind of like those things that, follow you with your faith and with, going into the future, and that how even as successful as he was, he still was so profoundly faithful, to know
Mm-hmm.
that he didn't get here without help. So
Sure. And what was that book called? Do you remember?
it was a Lawrence Welk book. It was
Okay.
a book written, and I think there are several of him, but this was probably the one that really stuck with me, to
Sure.
read about how he drug his family through his success, and how he lived from paycheck to paycheck. No different than most of us growing up is
Mm-hmm.
living from paycheck to paycheck, and the different areas that, I mean, he owned places in South Dakota, he owned places in Texas, and then ended up in California before he finally made it. So it was interesting to read about his life, and of course
Sure.
his relatives. So I guess that I really embraced those books as well. And knowing that we've all gone through struggles. I come from a family of 13. Um, and so I can certainly relate, because he had a large family
Mm-hmm.
as well.
Interesting. I will admit to not knowing a lot about Lawrence Welk, but my dad was a huge, huge fan. And so we grew up with one TV. So Saturday nights, you watch Lawrence Welk, whether you wanted to or not. So I'll have to check some of those books out. Well, Bev, it was so awesome to hear about you and about your library and the difference that you're making in your community. So thank you so much for joining me for Pathways Through the Prairie.